Hi guys. Thought I'd reach out and do our usual monthly, although it's about a week or so later than I would usually like to do it, and I didn't really have a lot to talk about, particularly for the monthly, and I didn't want to do the same format. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about what we've seen in the quarter, and I wanted to relate it back to a Marvel theme. I was watching Falcon and the Winter Soldier with my children, as one does when you have three young kids and twin boys who are 10. And it referred to the blip, and the blip as having previously happened in a past tense in the Marvel universe where half of humanity was wiped out. And I couldn't help but think of the correlation between what was 2020 and the blip. And the similarities, while not overplaying the lockdowns that we experienced here in Australia. Of course, there was loss of life, but the blip saw a recovery and people coming back to a more normal post-blip situation, which really sounds and feels like a 2020 recovery for all of us that we're going through. So while many of you know my thoughts on managing risk and return in a global environment and a risk return paradigm that is a global investment world. We like to view risk as a global management problem, and we also like to review return as a global consideration with an obvious local or Australian-based bias. Many of you will be sick of me saying it, but the Aussie market is 3 to 3.5, 3.2% of a total global market, and beholden to the price action that we see elsewhere offshore. So we must consider the broader global trade patterns with any recommendations that we make here in Australia, because like I've said to many of you previously, the Australian market will fall harder when there is a blip, like we saw, and it will recover more slowly. So hence the conversations that we are always having is to broaden your view, look bigger than this tiny little 3% of the global market that we invest in down here, and look for different asset classes and methods to invest. Now, in saying all of that, what did we see in 2020 and what have we seen so far now? So what we did see was a very clear and obvious bear market that began the moment there was a sniff of recession. So the moment it was sensed, the bear market is on. Equally predictably, and per the conversation that I had with many people at that time, it was over in a matter of months. So a bear market usually lasts sort of 6 to 12 months, 6 to 9 months, and that's exactly what happened. Now, post-blip, keeping the Avengers or the Marvel theme, post-blip, what do we see post-2020? Predictably, again, a bull market began the moment a trough was sensed. Okay, but several things. Bull markets will typically last longer. They can be several years, and the recovery from the recession translates into economic expansion, which is what we'll see. Now, what do we have post-blip? We have monetary policy in our favour, both locally and abroad. We have COVID-19 recovery or receding COVID-19 matters, albeit it's still playing out in parts of Asia and India, particularly right now. Fingers crossed here also. And we have unheralded fiscal stimulus here, US, Europe. So for the Marvel theme to be continued, as we've sort of slayed our recent foe in the form of that COVID market response that we saw, it's now the devout extremists, the followers, in the form of inflation, which will probably provide more battle sequences for our heroes. So taking the same global view I talked about earlier, so global view of risk, global view of return, global view almost now of inflation, although it'll be a separate to country thing, of course. Goods shortages that would typically arise and lend themselves to inflation, in a very simplified inflation view, will be now addressed through a global economy. So what I'm saying, particularly if there's a semiconductor problem, if there's a battery problem for Tesla and whoever it might be there, in a global economy, such shortages can be addressed more quickly than they would previously have been. So inflation won't necessarily be a problem for several years to come, and I don't think anyone is alone in saying that and agreeing with that. So, have your conversations with your advisors. Call us if any of the things are of note or importance, or you want to have a chat about it. Look forward to hearing from you. Leave some comments. I'll put the video on most of the usual mediums, and I'll speak to all of you again soon.